a little bit about abortion that's happening next door and why it is so important to be next door for these 40 days praying. I'm one of the women. Silent No More are the voices of the women who have bought the product over there and who have realized that it needs to be recalled. That abortion was a solution. It was supposed to fix my problem pregnancy, but instead it created a series of other problems for me. But before I get into my testimony, I'd really like to kind of back up and talk a little bit. It's funny, I have a talk in here, but we'll just put it down and see where God goes her. I'd like to talk a little bit first about why a woman walks into that clinic, because that is what we really need to be thinking about when we're praying out there, is what's driving her there. And you know, she's anywhere from a 13-year-old to a 22-year-old to a 42-year-old these days. Statistically speaking now, we see more women who already have one child having an abortion. So it's not like they don't know what is in their womb. But what is causing them to feel that that's the only choice they have? Because that's really what it comes down to. They feel they have no other choice. We feel we have no other choice. A lot of the women from Silent No More will say things like, I didn't think I had any other choice, or I didn't feel that there were any other solutions out there for me. Especially because a lot of us had our abortions in the 70s before the pregnancy centers really got going. So we do see more and more now, you know, we have this wonderful mobile center out there where these kind of support systems can really make the difference. But if a girl is walking into a clinic, if she's made an appointment, she's either abortion-minded or abortion-vulnerable. Now I'm going to talk about each one of those terms for a few minutes. Abortion-minded or abortion-vulnerable. An abortion-vulnerable woman is a woman who is vulnerable to the suggestion of having an abortion versus parenting and keeping the baby, or parenting and then placing the baby for adoption. She's vulnerable to the pressures, opinions, and attitudes of those who love her and are surrounding her, who are influencing her. If the people around her are saying to her, you are too young, you can't do this, or you know, you just started college, this isn't the right time. If her roommate, you know, first year of college, roommates, one of them comes in, she's pregnant. The other one says, now's not the time, you can't do that. You know, just go have an abortion. That's what my best friend said to me, just have an abortion, it's no big deal. She didn't know, I didn't know, we were two 16-year-olds. What these girls are hearing around them is abortion is the solution. They're not hearing things like, we'll help you. She's not hearing, you can do this, and we're going to come alongside you. You're going to make a great mother. You're going to be able to do this because God will provide for you. She's not hearing that message. She's hearing, you can't do it. She's hearing, this isn't a good time in your life. Maybe pressure from the husband that's saying, we have 3 kids already, we can't afford another child. So she wants to keep this baby, possibly, most likely. And she's really vulnerable to the help. She is typically the one that we can turn around. So you want to be praying that more and more of these girls are abortion vulnerable, because they're also vulnerable to the choice for life. An abortion-minded woman, to me, is a woman who walks in very determined to have this abortion. She will typically walk in, her eyes will be looking down, she'll be a little angry, or a lot angry, let's be honest. She's not in the mood to talk to anybody. She's typically already had 1, 2, or 3 abortions. And her heart is a rock. And the reason why it's a rock is if she starts healing, she'll fall apart. So she has learned to suck it up and take care of herself. She's up to that attitude, so to speak. She's going to be a survivor. And she is in so much pain. She has tried to do the right thing. She had the first abortion and she probably didn't want it. She was abortion vulnerable then. But the boyfriend said, if you don't have an abortion, I'm out of here. So she was choosing between the baby and the abortion. I'm sorry, the baby and the boyfriend. And she's thinking, and he says to her, we can have a baby when it's more convenient. You know, when we're further along in this relationship. She buys it. And then she has this abortion. And her spirit is aborted right alongside the baby. An abortion is a very, very traumatic event that we're not prepared for. And it overwhelms us. And we don't know how to handle it. None of us know how to handle a traumatic event. And we do the best we can because we don't go to God. So this girl is out there. She starts drinking to survive. She's thinking about that baby. Or she's really angry and she's starting to shut down. Usually we tend to get a little more promiscuous. A little more daring. We have kind of a little bit of a death wish because we don't like ourselves anymore. So we get reckless. And we end up pregnant again. But the guy isn't any more supportive. The circumstances in our lives haven't changed. So we have another abortion. Now we've gotten a little tougher. Now we're shutting down more. Now she's using drugs a little more regularly. She's getting a little more reckless. She's pregnant again. Now we see that in a sense as like, my gosh, you're using this as birth control. She keeps using it trying to come up with a different outcome. It's called traumatic reenactment. But it isn't a different outcome. So now she's in pain, but she's numbing it. And she's angry. She's angry at the world. She's hurting, and nobody's able to reach in with God's love. But don't give up, because you never know how the Spirit is moving. You never know if that abortion-minded woman who's angry, I mean, you know, Abby Johnson was a classic example of a woman who had had abortions and was determined to not like those pro-lifers, and was running a clinic, and God broke through. So we don't know, and we don't give up. And that's why prayer is so critical. And that's why we are doing spiritual battle when we are standing out in front of these places. This is spiritual war. And it's only by the power of prayer that we can break through those broken, numb, hard-hearted hearts. And I got to diverge here for a quick second because this is such a vision right now I have in before me. The Grand Canyon. How many of you have been to the Grand Canyon? It's beautiful. It's incredible, right? Well, my brother and his wife and my nephew were just there this weekend, and so they showed us pictures on Facebook. And I was looking at it all over again, and it was that same message. When I saw the Grand Canyon, I stood there and I said, God, this is so incredible. Your work is incredible. How did you do this? And I heard this little voice in my head said, this was easy. It's hearts that are hard that I can't get through. And it's that rock. I mean, when you think of the rock of the Grand Canyon, and God, you know, did all that, it's almost like he was painting with it, a paintbrush. And yet, our hearts become like rocks because they're broken, because they're hurt. Now, it's really easy when you're out there on that front line to get discouraged, but don't. Keep smiling, keep shining with the love of Jesus. Because when those people, especially the workers, I was with Sean Carney the other day, he's one of the founders of 40 Days, and he said that the workers typically come out in the last 10 days of each campaign. It's because we wear them down with prayers and smiles. We wear them down with the love of Christ. And so, smile. Give them flowers. There's a woman, the other night, I was speaking at a 40 Days event, and she had this little pink heart tin. And in this tin was a little bear, little tiny bear. And there was a little note that said something like, I lost you to abortion, but I'll hold you in my heart forever. And she handed me one as after I was done speaking, and it just really touched my heart. I mean, well, I mean, I was out there. But I said to her afterwards, this is a wonderful gift to give to the women when they're walking out of the clinic. Because they're feeling a lot right now. Let them connect to their child. The way that we break through that, the prayer that you can be praying for those women when they walk out of those clinics, and you see that look on their face that knows that they've been, I mean, in a way, they feel like it's almost a look like they've been emotionally raped. They've been traumatized at such a level. And just to give them the love of God. You know, and I saw this little tin and I thought, oh, just a little touch of something. Give them a hug. Wrap your arms around them. Let them know that you're not there to judge them, but to love them. When I did the talk the other day in Pittsburgh, I used 4 words, and I'd like to share those with you briefly. I'm watching my time here. I want to do some Q&A too, so if y'all have some questions, I want to answer some questions. But I want to give you 4 words for the front line out there. First word is fear. And I think we've touched on that a lot. The women that are going into that clinic feel fear. They are so afraid of what's going on. They're afraid of their future being ruined and traumatized by a child. The child feels like an enemy because it's going to threaten the plans they have. Everything is upside down, and they're afraid of everything. They are afraid of what this pregnancy means. So abortion seems like the answer. But they're afraid to walk in that clinic as well. There's another really important word for us to think about, and that word is judgment. And you know, as women who have had abortions, we can really relate to this. The pro-lifers, we hear them say things like, yeah, those women can murder their children. And you might as well just take a knife and put it in my heart. I know I murdered my child. But when you say it, it's like the condemnation starts all over again in my head. That message from Satan, the tapes start again. You're no good. And you know, I got to tell you, and these girls can also tell you, you really have to hold on to your forgiveness. Because when we hear that sense in which, you know, we're murderers, we don't feel welcomed amongst you. We feel your judgment. These women, when we stand up and we say, I regret my abortion, when men say, I regret lost fatherhood, that takes courage, and we're speaking out of forgiveness. But we're able to do this because somebody told us about God's forgiveness. They told us that we didn't have to live in the sin of it, in the shame of it. They told us they weren't judging us. But we are judging ourselves. We're expecting you to judge us. The message is, pro-lifers judge women who have abortions. So when you're out there, remember to love on them. Remember to say things like, we're not judging you. We're just here to help you. We're here to help you after an abortion, before an abortion. We're here to help you. We're not here to judge you. Because you know what? I always have to remind myself of this in a moment like this. Is we've all sinned. We're all sinners. Ours is just, we're wearing ours. We're wearing signs that tell you ours. One of ours. Okay, one of ours. So, we have fear. We have judgment. more important word, the third word, love. Love on them. Love. Show the love of God. Be about reflecting God's love to them. Love one another as you're out there. Do not let any one of you stand out there single, alone. Do not always be in teams. Do not judge each other. We can do that. Love. God's greatest message to us is that we love our neighbor as ourselves. And a big commandment. Love God, love our neighbor. That tells me love is really, really, really important. But judgment is much easier. Attitude is much easier. Love is hard. But please love each other and look at those people over there not as souls that are lost and condemned to hell, but are souls that God is working to bring home to the kingdom. We want to see these people in heaven with us, don't we? Yes. We want to see that abortion doctor in heaven. He's just a broken, lost guy or girl. The director over there is just broken and lost, been involved, who knows what. But the love of God is the greatest gift in the world. Jesus Christ is God, love incarnate. So love one another. And the final word that I want to share with you is trust. And this is so cool, because the bottom line, folks, is we have to trust what God is. So the trust is trusting in God. God is using us to do something over there, but we have to trust Him for the results. You know, we want to see the results right away. Now, we know already that there's been about 36 babies saved from this particular campaign that started on Wednesday. And we love to see those results. But you know what I love? Are all the babies we don't know we've saved. Because that number is incredibly higher. We will never know till we get to heaven. We must trust God with the results of this effort. You do this every day. Now, you're fortunate to do this in Florida, where it might be hot, it might be rainy, but it's not snowing or freezing rain, trust me. So, you know, keep in mind your cohorts to the north, in Maine and so forth, that are doing it in the tougher locations. But, you know, we must trust God with the results. And in each day when you're out there and you're thinking, you know, am I making a difference? Or, you know, you give the girl the information and she goes in and you think she's coming out and she's had an abortion. And she might have just really gone in and gotten the birth control pill that visit. So we don't know what's going on all the time. So don't get discouraged. Oh, wait, I wish I had my phone. Oh gosh, what was it? There was this great quote that the bishop up in Pittsburgh had. Oh, I know what it was. The bishop up in Pittsburgh suggested that we fast from discouragement and judgment, but there was another word, discouragement and judgment. It was discouragement. What's another discouraging?
Despair, despondence.
Despair. It was despair. Thank you. Judgment. Okay, so here's the deal. You have to fast from despair and discouragement. Don't get out there and get discouraged. Trust what God is doing. Okay? All right. So, where do we go from here? Do I share my story? Testimony. Okay. All right. You know, I don't like sharing my testimony. It's like standing up here really naked. You know, you're out there talking about what you did wrong. And when I was 16 years old, I didn't want anybody to know I was sexually active. So what I did is, you know, my friend said you can have an abortion. And I remember driving downtown. I was in Detroit, Michigan at the time. And I remember driving down to the clinic, and I'm thinking, this feels wrong, but it's legal, so it's got to be okay. And I got down there,
It's not.
and, they told me I was 13 weeks, and I really had to, I was almost 13 weeks, and so I had to really decide that day. And I had no idea what I was doing, except I didn't want anybody to know I was sexually active. I wanted that secret kept at all costs. So I paid them $300, and I got up on the table. Because keeping that secret was so important. My parents didn't know. It was my secret. And the father of the baby knew, and so anyhow, I had the procedure. It was painful. I was 16 years old. I had never had my legs up in stirrups before. It was traumatic. And I drove to my sister's after the procedure, and I spent the night at her house, and I remember getting into bed and getting in the fetal position and crying. And I was so relieved my problem was over, but I couldn't stop crying. Couldn't figure it out, and I went right to sleep. And I woke up the next morning and I was still crying. And I was getting dressed and I was thinking, I've got to get ready, I got to go home, I got to get it together. And I thought, yesterday never happened. Ironic, the procedure was a week ago next Tuesday. And so that day, I went into denial. And I lived in denial for 19 years. Denial is a really safe place to be when you're scared. I believe denial is a God-given place of psychological states when we are not equipped to handle pain. When traumatic events happen, we shut down, and that's kind of a good thing. And as a 16-year-old, there was nothing in my experiences that could prepare me. And I lived in denial for 19 years. Now, that was at age 16. At age 19, I met a man named Jim Forney. And he was a really neat guy. And he was 23 years older, and he had older children, and he didn't want children. When I had my abortion, I thought I had aborted my ability to have children. So I wanted to marry a man that already had children, had a family, because I couldn't have a family. I didn't want to have a family. I was sure God would punish me. So I married Jim Forney. We've been married 32 years now, so it's amazing because the reason why I chose my husband is not the reason somebody should marry him, but God's grace has prevailed, and he's a very wonderful man. But I moved on, and I kept shutting down. Anytime that I would hear the word abortion, I would just get drunk or get high, and that's how I survived. And my biological clock went off when I was 27 years old, much to my surprise and Jim Forney's surprise. And we had this precious little child, by God's grace. And this child became my world. And I was so sure God was going to punish me because I had my abortion, that I became, that phrase, helicopter mom that hovers? Well, I was kind of like that on steroids. I just overwhelmed her. And I had to be everything to her because I was so sure God was after her and God was going to take her to punish me for my abortion. I made all of her clothes. I made her bed linens. I made her curtains in her room. I made the canopy on her bed. Everything that she was surrounded with, I made, because it somehow made me feel like I was controlling and protecting her. That was not normal. I was not a normal mom. I was a driven, crazy woman. I was a perfectionist, and I was doing everything I could to hopefully outperform my sin. If I did enough, maybe I could tip the scales and God will love me anyway. Because I certainly wasn't worthy. And, I got along pretty well that way, except nobody knew how crazy I was except my husband. And, this morning at Redeemer, I told the story about how I was in a Bible study. And 3 other women were there. And one of the girls had an abortion. And she was talking about her abortion, and she was going through a healing program. And she had just had a baby, and she was having a hard time bonding with the baby, which is a very common response. And I said to her, "Dana, I had an abortion when I was 16. It's no big deal. Get over it." I thought I said something brilliant. Everybody else in the room knew that girl needed help. And they started praying for me. And this is what I want to encourage you to do. This is the most common question I get from people is, I have a sister, I have a cousin, I have a wife, I have a friend who's had an abortion, but she's not dealing with it. What should I do to help her? Pray for her. These 3 women prayed for me for less than 6 months. It was probably more about 5 months. And God did something incredible in that 5 months. He broke through my denial. And I came face to face with what I had done. I got to physically feel my child in my arms. And I knew she was the child that I had aborted. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what happened in that moment, but I know she was real. And it was in that moment that I didn't have an abortion. I finally realized I aborted a child. That's how deep my denial was. I had never allowed myself to acknowledge my child. When I acknowledged my child, that's when God softened my heart. It was the baby. It was my baby that opened my heart finally. And that's what's been helped those women as well. It's what's helped all of us. When we finally acknowledge what we've done. It's the greatest gift I was ever given, that reality. I called that young woman and she came and helped me with her mom. And that's the end of the story, but the beginning now of his story, because he took me through healing. He redeemed my abortion. He took my life over. And I learned that God's unconditional love even included forgiving us for our abortion. There's no sin too big for the cross. That's what I really learned. And that God's love even covers a woman, a 16-year-old girl who's had an abortion. And that was such a great gift. And then, when I started working for Anglicans for Life, I thought it was kind of an anomaly. And then women started coming up to me. And some of them had abortions because of the same reasons I did. Some had abortions because the doctor had told them to terminate the pregnancy because they had physical ailments or the baby had a fetal anomaly. Everybody just started kind of, the reality is that we default to abortion when we don't know how to handle the problem pregnancy. And that is really what we have to undo. We have to help people understand that the abortion procedure is so, the obvious is that it kills our children, but it also destroys the women. It destroys the men. Men, once we started the Silent No More campaign, they started coming out. They said, we're suffering too. We regret the fact that we lost our opportunity to be a father. So men stand up now. So this abortion procedure, which is supposed to solve this problem pregnancy, is now created a dead baby, a broken woman, a broken man. When I did tell my parents 19 years later, now we have broken grandparents. My daughter found out when she was 8 years old that her mother had an abortion.
Your name?
And I had to explain what an abortion was to an 8-year-old. My daughter lost a sister. This simple procedure that they love to refer to it as destroys the baby, and it has destroyed men and women. I believe it's destroying our culture. Because now we're seeing abortion on the other end of the life spectrum, with people dying, having their lives their deaths hastened. My mother recently had a stroke in April, and we put her, the doctors recommended comfort care. And comfort care really was actually massive amounts of morphine being pumped into her against my wishes, but the rest of the family thought it was a good way to protect her from feeling pain and didn't understand what we were doing. And as I sat there day after day in the hospital, I said to my sister, I feel like the same reasons that I justified having my child aborted, we're now using basically to abort mom. And that's what I felt like we were doing. We were aborting mom. We were making this whole death process hurry up because we had lives we had to get back to. So her death was hastened using morphine under the guise of comfort care. So folks, it is, that place over there has planted a seed. Planned Parenthood and all those who legalized abortion put a seed into our culture that is bearing death. And you are the answer that God is calling to eradicate those weeds and plant life. So don't give up. Trust God. Fast from discouragement and what's the other word? Despair. Fast from that and stay strong. Love one another. Love those girls.